An Apple disk image is a disk image commonly used by the Mac OS X operating system. When opened, an Apple disk image is mounted as a volume within the Finder. An Apple disk image can be structured according to one of several proprietary disk image formats, including the Universal Disk Image format and the New Disk Image format. An Apple disk image file's name usually has DMG as its extension. An Apple disk image allows secure password protection as well as file compression, and hence serves both security and file distribution functions. Such a disk image is most commonly used to distribute software over the Internet. Overview: Apple originally created its disk image formats because the resource fork used by Mac applications could not easily be transferred over mixed networks such as those that make up the Internet. Even as the use of resource forks declined with Mac OS X, disk images remained the standard software distribution format. Disk images allow the distributor to control the Finder's presentation of the window, which is commonly used to instruct the user to copy the application to the correct folder. Universal Disk Image format is the native disk image format for Mac OS X. Disk images in this format typically have a DMG extension. New Disk Image format was the previous default disk image format in Mac OS 9, and disk images with this format generally have a IMG or SME file extension. Files with the SME extension are actually applications that mount an embedded disk image, thus a self-mounting image, and are intended only for Mac OS 9 and earlier. A previous version of the format, intended only for floppy disk images, is usually referred to as Disk Copy 4.2 format, after the version of the Disk Copy utility that was used to handle these images. A similar format that supported compression of floppy disk images is called DART. Apple disk image files are published with a MIME type of application exe Apple Disk Image. Different file systems can be contained inside these disk images, and there is also support for creating hybrid optical media images that contain multiple file systems. Some of the file systems supported include Hierarchical File System, HFS+, File Allocation Table, ISO 9660 and Universal Disk Format. Apple disk images can be created using utilities bundled with Mac OS X, specifically Disk Copy in Mac OS X v10.2 and earlier and Disk Utility in Mac OS X v10.3 and later. These utilities can also use Apple disk image files as images for burning CDs and DVDs. Disk image files may also be managed via the command line using the dutil utility. UDIF data format. Apple disk image files are essentially raw disk images with some added metadata, optionally with one or two layers applied that provide compression and encryption. In dutil these layers are called QDIF encoding and SYNcrypted encoding. UDIF supports ADC, SLIB, and BZIP2 compression internally. Trailer equals, the trailer can be described using the following C structure. All values are big-endian. Here is an explanation. Support. Apple has not released any documentation on the format, but attempts to reverse engineer parts of the format have been successful. The encrypted layer was reverse engineered in an implementation called VileFault. There are few options available to extract files or mount the proprietary Apple disk image format. Some cross-platform conversion utilities are. DMG to IMG was originally written in Perl. However, the Perl version is no longer maintained, and the project was rewritten in C. Currently, without additional tools, the resulting images may be mounted only under Mac OS X and under Linux. RDIF ADC compressed images have been supported since version 1.5. DMG extractor is written in Java with GUI, and it supports more advanced features of DMG including AES-128 encrypted images but not UDCO images. PZIP. In Windows, most DMG images can be opened using several other programs such as 7-Zip, Ultra ISO, and ISO Buster. Mac Drive can also mount simple DMG files as drives under Windows, but not sparse disk or encrypted DMGs. A free Apple DMG disk image viewer also exists. In Linux and possibly other Unix flavors, most DMG files can be burned to CD/DVD using any CD burner program or directly mounted to a mount point. Darling DMG is a fuse module enabling easy DMG file mounting on Linux. equals Macintosh equals. In Mac OS X v 10.2.3, Apple introduced compressed disk images and Internet-enabled disk images for use with the Apple Utility Disk Copy, which was later integrated into Disk Utility in 10.3. The Disk Copy application had the ability to display a multilingual software license agreement before mounting a disk image. The image will not be mounted unless the user indicates agreement with the license. Currently, the only way to open a DMG disk image in Mac OS X is to use either the developer version of Disk Copy, or a beta version of the unreleased 6.5. However, both versions can only open uncompressed images. Compressed disk images are unusable on Mac OS X. See also, CLOOP, Disk Image Mounter, Installer, Sparse Image. References. External links. Demystifying DMG. A detailed discussion of the DMG file format and mounting it on iOS and Mac OS X, Apple Developer Connection. A quick look at Package Maker and Installer, O'Reilly Mac Dev Center Tip 16-5. Create a disk image from a directory in the terminal. Dutil, 1, a Darwin and OS X General Commands Manual.